Tihei Mori ora, kia ora koutou katoa, assalamu alaikum. Hey everyone, how's it going? I haven't done one of these lives for some time, so I got kia ora everybody. I don't know if it just already started, looked like it was delayed. Kia ora everybody, assalamu alaikum. Tonight I'm going to do a live chat just to share my thoughts about off the back of the Huru Huru shop opening up in Wellington and causing me to reflect again on the status of Te Reo Maori and its accessibility and lack of people's attitudes, etc., etc. Um, like all of these lives, oh, well, I've only done a few, but it's just to share my thoughts, enter into the discussion. Obviously, without needing to be said, really, it's just my opinion, which carries no authority whatsoever. But I do consider my opinions quite carefully, and I look at facts and look at what's going around, and try to have an informed opinion at the very least, whether you agree with it or not. So yeah, anybody and everybody is welcome to join me. If you have a comment or a question, you may well disagree with me. That's fine too. But yeah, I've made some notes in no particular order as I've done in the past with these lives. I've made some notes and I'll share them. And I also got some comments slash questions from some of my friends, like the brother Tyrone. Salaam alaikum, mehua. Thank you for that. And Ismail, hola, hermano. Gracias, muchas gracias por tu comentario. So I have Ismail, who's a friend, a distant friend overseas. He's Mexican, and he is very interested in New Zealand and Maori culture and language. So sometimes, the interest can come from far and wide, and I think that's awesome. So anyway, I'll get straight into it. Um, right. Okay, so I'm going to read off my comment my little bullet point I've given for myself, and then I'll sort of elaborate on it a wee bit. While we want Māori to be normalised and made common throughout New Zealand, very often we shoot down non-Māori who try to use it and normalise it, I suppose, and or we set arbitrary rules with no common authority. There seems to be a lack of acceptance or support that Te Reo Māori is something for all New Zealanders, and therefore we all have a reasonable right to it. So yeah, so that's my feeling at times. It's a weird feeling, a mixture of, I guess, frustration, sadness, and confusion at times. When we, on the one hand, we're so passionate about having Māori be a national language, spoken in daily life by as many people as possible. We want it out there. A lot of people even arguing for compulsion in schools, making it compulsory. And I totally support that. I'm one of those people who would love for Māori to be part of just the everyday fabric of life in New Zealand, Aotearoa. Um, However, when tends to be when non-Maori do use the language, and sometimes yes, they do it in ways that gets media attention. They name a business or a company, an organization. That wow, we're just really quick to shoot them down and get very defensive about that's our language, that's our culture, and yeah, sometimes it takes me a bit by surprise. It almost seems counterintuitive to what we're trying to achieve. Now, don't get me wrong. I think people skip this part of my opinion. Sometimes I suspect willingly, but I'm not meaning that it's a free for all for anything and everyone, every type of product and service. I do not support Māori being used to sell products that are damaging or offensive, products or services, especially overseas where the person or people or company may have no connection to New Zealand whatsoever, and they're just blatantly, commercializing something that they know nothing of. I don't support that. But as far as people being in New Zealand, especially obviously New Zealanders, setting up organizations or naming their children or whatever the act may be where they want to use the Maori language in a respectful way, I'm all for that. Even if the words or phrases that they use, like in the recent example of huru huru, the debate flying around, a lot of people are at best they're mocking and laughing, and at worst they're offended and angry. Um, People may say things and use words and phrases in all languages that we don't necessarily like, but if it's not owned, if there's no claim to ownership of that term or phrase or word, and it's not offensive, I'm all for it. you know, the more Māori, the better, is what I say. I would love to walk down a street in any town or city in New Zealand and see shops with Māori names, businesses with Māori names, or be going through, I don't know, I say yellow pages, very old fashioned, but like, looking through company names and people are using Māori terms and phrases. That's awesome. I'm all for it. That's, to me, a way that we can have Māori normalized in our society. So that's how I feel about that. Um, the next point I've made here for myself, Te Reo has been an official language of New Zealand since 1987. And this is really just a pātai or question for everybody because it's, I'm not making a statement as much as just posing the question. If it's an official language of New Zealand, does that give us all the right to use it within reason? You know, as long as it's not offensive, as long as it's not intellectual property or whatever, wouldn't an official language of a country imply at least that it's all of ours, that we all can use it? Um, like I say, I don't have the answer to that, and everyone will come to their own conclusions. But I just wanted to throw that into the argument because I haven't heard anybody say that or use that as another angle to the discussion. All right, it's an official language, and that's a good thing. This is a legally protected official language of this country, regardless of how few people actually speak it, to be honest. But it has that legal status. Now, does that only benefit Maori people to have our language and culture promoted, or does it actually give everybody, Maori and non-Maori, some element of rights to it? All right, rights may be the wrong word, but access to it without having to be shouted down, shot down, told that they're ripping us off or whatever. It's just a question. Um, the next thing I want to talk about, generic kupu or words. Generic words meaning, they're not specific to any place, person, tribe, hapu, historical event. They're just generic words. Um, are they in the public domain, or so, and therefore able to be used and encouraged to be used, and everyone be happy about that, or are they not? I mean, this is kind of like a grey area. I mean, I'll hark back to what I just said. It's an official language of this country. I don't know exactly the legal definition of what that means, but I I have strong suspicion that it means it's all of ours by law, at least technically the generic language anyway. So anyway, I just sort of think that generic words are in the public domain. It's my feeling. I can't speak legally, but yeah, my feeling is that generic terms and phrases and words are public domain. So if generic words are used to name organizations, teams, businesses, a person's name, our children, um, if it's not offensive or damaging, that's great. I'm all for it. I'd love, like I just said before, I'd love to see more and read more Maori names of things. Even the Huru Huru shop in Wellington, I will say. All right. For those who don't know New Zealand geography or demography at all, I live in the far north, and the iwi up here, or the tribe, have dialectual. All tribes have their little dialectual idiosyncrasies, and up here, the word huru huru means hair, means fur, means feathers. It's very broad in its meaning, but a common interpretation or a popular interpretation of it is pubic hair, which has created all this furore in the media, and everybody's either at best laughing at it or at worst angry and offended. But anyway, I've sort of veered off topic a little bit, but the idea that generic words are in the public domain, that's, I think they should be. This one's a wee bit another left field maybe angle, and it only just occurred to me in the last couple of days after this issue had already blown up last week. But I'm a speaker of Indonesian. I learn Indonesian, and I have been doing so for a few years now. And for anyone who speaks either Bahasa Indonesia or Bahasa Melayu, Malay, you will learn quickly, if you haven't already, that there are a lot of words, phrases, and language in that language that Maori is clearly derived from. It's really fascinating. It's interesting. It sort of like shows that we have these historical links. I mean, there's just way too many examples for it to be coincidence or just would not be a thing. So anyway, the historians say it's open book stuff that Maori people theoretically a lot of history suggests we came down from Asia, from mainland Asia, through the Indonesian Malay archipelago into Polynesia, and eventually to Aotearoa. So point being, if many of our words in our reo actually is derived from Malay, what's to stop them stepping into our squabble and saying, well, actually, you guys are actually just fighting over words that came from us? Yeah, I mean, I'm not suggesting they would or should or will do that. I'm just saying, what's to stop them? And if they did, what would we say? Here we are arguing over who owns it and tuturu Māori and, you know, foreigners and Pākehā shouldn't use it or whatever, whatever our argument is, whatever side of the argument we're on. And then what's to stop an older culture from whence we came saying, well, actually, you guys are just being silly because those words came from here. And then we'd all look kind of silly. So, yeah, it's just another thing to think about. We sort of love to talk about how, this is ours original and all of that, but is it? You know? Um, yeah, so Huru Huru, Quentin Hita on his Māori in a Minute page just put it brilliantly. So if you haven't seen that already, go to Māori in a Minute on Facebook and see his recent video from, I think it was just last night or maybe the night before. Um, it has a broad meaning, everyone leaping on this pubic hair thing to either make a joke and mock or get offended. I mean, I get it. I get it because it does mean pubic hair in the sense that it includes human hair on all parts of the body, but it's kind of like, yeah, you can have a giggle. I'm not that serious about it, but it's just a cheap laugh. And at the end of the day, it's certainly not worth getting hot about or yeah, just talking about so much. Huru huru does mean feathers. It does mean fur. It does mean hair. It does also mean pubic hair. But it's that broad thing, like narrowing it down to mean pubes and then being sort of shocked and whatever that a shop called themselves that is just kind of like just off the mark, really. It's just, yeah, that's all I'd say. Um, Good on them. And hey, it's given them heaps of attention, I'm sure. There'll be all sorts of people probably going there to have a look at it and take a selfie in front of a sign or whatever. I don't know. Good for them. Good luck to them, I say. The next one is kind of like not directly to do with the language, but to do with how people are responding, not only to that huru huru one. That's really just a symptom, to be honest, in my opinion. It's not about that, but we just respond so emotionally and angrily towards people we perceive to be ripping our culture off. But even, that I kind of get, even if I don't agree with the reasoning, if there is any reasoning sometimes. But what I don't get is we turn on each other in a whim too. Like, um, ngā mihi ki a koe te hāmua nikora, he shared my post about this a few nights ago, maybe a few days back. And that was cool. Like, whatever, that's fine. Yeah, I've got an opinion, so sweet. And just the backlash on it was like immediate. Like people calling me, oh, you're colonized and you got no respect for the culture. And it was just like, whoa, 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 just hold your horses. Like the other thing too that I thought was ironic, and I don't know if everyone saw the irony, but they're calling me, typing away furiously, angrily about how colonized I am, but they're doing it in English, of course. I mean, the language of colonization is the one that they're abusing me about being colonized. Does anyone else see the irony? So I responded in Maori, and then Te Hamua responded to my comment saying, "Oh, I'll do mine in English because I don't choose to weaponize my language." And I know he's taking a dig. He's digging at me, implying that I'm weaponizing my Maori and using it to shame people, which is not the point at all. My point was only because some of the abusive comments, low level abuse, don't get me wrong, I don't want to make out they're going too hard, but my point there was the irony. Like they're abusing me about being colonized in English, the language of colonization. That was my point. If they had been, if it wasn't about colonization and they were dismissing me or disagreeing with me, I wouldn't have responded the same way. I just wanted to make a point of the irony of that. Um, but anyway, it is what it is. I have no, I don't take any of it personally. I just get surprised and a wee bit disappointed perhaps that people just get so angry. Like, no, first they're angry at, some people calling their shop a Maori name, and then I say that I think that's good, and then they get angry at me. It's just like we're angry birds, just whoa, let's be cool. Anyway, oh, let me add to that. This might not be a popular thing to say, but it's how I feel. Let's face the reality that we are a colony, and all of us are colonized to varying extents. Most of us to a high extent. All right, we are living in an English colony in the sense of it's the dominant culture, it's the dominant language. It you know we're in the Commonwealth and all of those other obvious things. We're in the developed modern world of developed modern English speaking world. That is what it is, man. That isn't something, yeah, if I'm colonized, then yeah, I'm colonized. Okay, that's true, and so are we all. So I'm that's how I feel about it. My question, or that question, in my opinion, is how do we reassert our language and culture to occupy and engage everyone in a healthy way within that context, within the context of the fact that we are a colony, we are colonized, I'm speaking English right now. You know, let's how do we reassert our language and culture in that space in a healthy way so that everyone can engage positively and create a new Aotearoa colony, with Maori and Pākehā culture as the dominant cultures, and plus we're multicultural now. But those two, yeah, it is what it is, man. We're a colony. Okay, if I'm colonized, shoot me, whatever. Um, Here we go. So, right, I'm sort of my last main one is oh, maybe I bypassed this a wee bit, or maybe I didn't, but I have to. It was a big point, and I might have missed it. The elephant in the room about this whole debate is ownership. Who owns te reo? All right, and of course, Maori people, understandably so, will assert that we do. It's our language, it's our culture, and I agree. There's no argument for me on that in that sense. But again, as an official language of New Zealand and a language we would like to become embraced as part of New Zealand culture for Maori people and for anyone who cares to engage. Um, yeah, the ownership thing can be a barrier to access, at least in how people see it. So if people see it as our thing to protect, which yep, I get that too, and I support that too. Protect it, but make it if it's going to survive into the long term. I believe we need to be really open with it and in a positive way. Yes, careful so that it's not exploited and abused, but at the same time, invite people to be a part of it because they do want to be. The writing's on the wall. People want to learn Maori in increasing numbers from different walks of life and even from different countries. And I know people personally who learn and or speak Maori and some to a good high level who are not even New Zealanders, let alone Maori or Pākehā. So, that's a good thing. I mean, let's not be so obsessed about ownership and then getting defensive and sort of grabbing tight of it and barking at anybody who comes near, sort of thing. I don't believe in that. Um, yeah, now before I'm going to jump to the bro Tyrone's questions, and I think he doesn't obviously expect me to answer these definitively, but he's posing these questions, and they're good ones too. Tyrone says, Pātai, whose view holds the most weight if you're both Māori who both have valid arguments? I guess the scenario he's painting is if two Māori people are arguing over language and who's, they're both Māori, so there's no cultural sort of barrier. Whose view has the most weight? Now, that's again, that harks back into ownership. And to be honest, in my opinion, there's no answer because no one really owns it. No one owns any language, perhaps. I don't really, owns, what does that owns mean? That's going to be perceived differently, but nobody has the authoritative legal definition of ownership to just decree this is what it is. So I think people, we have to accept that we have to be rational and reasonable, kōrero, whakarongo, allow solutions to specific issues to emerge from open, honest dialogue. We have to be rational and kind of calm and just that's what I believe because none of those two Māoris who are arguing over something has the right over the other one. So we just have to follow our cultural channels as well through whānau, through hapu, iwi. There is ways that we can assert ourselves reasonably. Um, but at the end of the day, ownership and no one can wave the magic toko toko and sort of decree anything. It just we have to compromise. His other one is this. His second part is this: if our language is being used by those who don't respect our tikanga, then how do you create a conversation without judgment, or how do you know their intentions? Interesting. Yeah, ka pai tēnā pātai. It's a good question. My response to that, again, I can't definitively answer anything, but my response is tikanga is a fluid thing. All right, it's not frozen in time. It's not set for the whole country and all of the iwi. It's not set even within iwi. It's not set between hapu. And over time, tikanga changes. I mean, the root. This is my opinion too about the word tikanga and the concept. The root word of tikanga is tika, and that's correct or doing the right thing. So that's my interpretation. What does tikanga mean? Tikanga means to do the right thing in that time and place. And there are some things that are they're age old and they're constant. But then tikanga, I think we've all seen heaps of examples where tikanga gets changed to suit the situation, and that's life. Like that's our ancestors did that. They adapted. We are adapting. Our generations to come will adapt. Will need to adapt. That's how. I mean, that's a strength. That's how we've survived. How our culture has survived. It's morphed and it's sort of like been pliable at times, and some things have obviously fallen off and been discarded, and new things have come to respond to the situation. So yeah, people not respecting tikanga. I mean, if it's just being disrespectful, quite separately from tikanga, then that's just never good and not good, and that's common sense. Um, but it's an arbitrary thing. Tikanga gets made up, it gets changed, it gets swapped out. I mean, we've seen it all. So yeah, it's too simple to say who don't respect our tikanga, because what does that mean in practice? If they're just being dickheads or assholes, then that's not respecting the tikanga of any culture. So that's no good. Um, there should at least be some criteria about the nature of that. What have I said? Business or organization, how acceptable it is socially. So if they're not respecting the tikanga, then in what ways? Is there a consensus on that? Maybe in that sense of like people using Maori without respecting it, maybe it could be localized to iwi and hapu in the area of that activity. Maybe there could be some local authority over what's happening with the language and or culture. Yeah. So I don't know. I probably didn't answer your question, my bro, but that's my thoughts on your questions anyway. And Ismail from de Mexico, he says a beautiful comment actually. It's not really it's not a question, it's a statement. He says, I think that every language has their own background, history, culture, reason of being, and so on. All people that interact with the language must know at least the basic reasons or the principles of the culture of the original people that use that language. In the case of Maori or any other language, everyone is committed to look at it with respect, admiration, and use it properly to honor and again respect the culture and all the peeps that use it. Ka tika, tika marika. All right, that's absolutely right. What could it? You can't. No one could argue with that. Um, Although there's one little bit in there, and he says everyone is committed to look at it. Well, I would say everyone maybe ought to be, or everyone could choose to be. In the context of New Zealand, yeah, not everyone is committed to look at it with respect and admiration. That's just not the reality here in New Zealand. But it's noble, a noble pursuit or noble wish. Um, yeah, I agree with him. Um, what can I say? Yes, we should do everything with respect and with knowledge. Yeah, even but that includes everybody, like people who are engaging from the outside and even the people from within. So in the case of Maori people and language, we should be respectful as well to each other, to the kaupapa, to the others who have a good intention, even if they sort of like make mistakes and stuff. We should be respectful and use admiration too. So I agree with you, Ismail. Um, and I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So we all have to play our part in that. Um, yeah, but in saying that, also, yeah, that's fluid too, and people's perceptions of how to be respectful and show admiration will vary. So nobody can spell that out easily. Um, right, I'm going to sum up because I've been talking for quite a while. Um, Although our language is enjoying a spike in interest, like people enrolling in courses and the feeling, the vibe is good, which is awesome. The truth is, the numbers don't lie. Our language is still tracking downwards as far as competence is concerned, meaning fluent, conversationally capable speakers of Maori, the numbers of those people, of us, is going down. Okay? Just because there's spikes of interest and big enrollments and courses, I'm talking about people who can hold a conversation, even just a basic daily conversation. Those numbers are going down, and even more concerning is that the largest age group in the people who do speak Maori are the 65 and over age group, which implies that a good dose of them are native speakers from the old day. They've grown up with it, and yeah, the foreseeable future, if that trend continues, is not looking good based on that data. All right, that's not my opinion. It's not, what I think. That's just the data. All right. For that reason, and because it's awesome to share, so for that reason, and because it's awesome to share culture, it's just a positive, fun thing to do. In my opinion, it's imperative that Te Reo is embraced by the wider New Zealand community because we are only around 15% of the whole New Zealand population, Maori people I'm talking about. If every single one of us spoke Maori, all of the Maori people, that would only be at most 15% of New Zealand, at most. That's if every single one of us spoke Maori competently. Um, and that's just nowhere near anything like even half, let alone a majority. All right, so just based on the numbers alone, we not need, that's just my opinion, we need, but we could use as many people speaking Maori as possible, sorry, to boost that number. Let's get 50, 60, 70, 100% of people speaking Maori in New Zealand, whether they are Maori, Pākehā, Asian, Polynesian, American, wherever they come from, because my dream, and I'm sure I'm not alone, will be that in the future New Zealand is a bilingual country. All right, we speak Maori, we speak English in New Zealand, just like in, I don't know, off the top of my head, in India, everybody can speak Hindi and English generally. Um, in the province of Quebec in Canada, people speak English and French. That's what being bilingual is. Like just both languages are necessary and normal. I would love to see that in New Zealand, and it's not going to be enough for just Maori people to speak it. Um, okay, so that's me. Uh, whether you watched it live or you see it later on and you're interested, feel free to make a comment or respond. If you agree or disagree with me, that's fine. If we can stick to the kaupapa, that will be good. I've had enough of people throwing rocks and just saying, "Oh, you're colonized, you're ball-led," and all that. Like people love to go hard, but whatever. Kia rātou. That's their buzz. Um, Kapai. All right. Good night, everybody, and have a great week ahead of you. Assalamu alaikum. Mauri ora kia tātou.